Hey folks, it's Ray with Taste Radio. I am supremely honored to be sitting down with Emma Chamberlain and Chris Gallant of Chamberlain Coffee. Emma, how are you?
I'm so good, how are you?
Fantastic. Chris, how are you?
Amazing.
You know, you guys were just up on stage here at the Beverage Forum. Fantastic job. There was a louder applause, I think, for you guys than there was for Robert Downey Jr.
Take that back right now.
Why? No, I think that you don't...
That is the greatest honor.
Well, come on.
I mean, I'm blushing.
No.
Oh, a little bit.
You have a great product. Your product's already in
you.
Whole Foods. His isn't.
Oh my God.
Isn't that
I
true?
love that. Well,
Yeah.
I love Whole Foods. Oh my God, I love Whole Foods.
Whole Foods is pretty amazing. I don't see a lot... this is not a knock on Whole Foods. I don't see a lot of new brands, particularly in the cooler set.
Totally.
And Chamberlain Coffee is one of the few in the last year or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how are you feeling about that? Is it going well?
I mean, it's such a mind-boggling thing because, you know, retailers, it's a tough world out there and they are not messing around.
No.
Like, if it's not moving, it's not happening. And it's been kind of frightening, but we've been so fortunate to have figured it out, I feel like, in a very short period of time. And, you know, we have such an amazing team just really grinding to, you know, build these relationships all simultaneously so that we can, you know, have a strong retail presence in a short amount of time. And it's been, I think, somewhat overwhelming for the team. We're exhausted a little bit, but I think it's exciting because, you know, there's a lot in retail. You know, that's, I think, a really promising sort of strategy for us, and I think we realize that, and we're like, let's hit it hard then.
Yeah, I had spoken with another entrepreneur in the coffee set a few years back, and they said, you know, getting on shelf is the easy part in so many ways.
Yeah.
Coming off shelf, selling the product is another thing. And Chris, you know, when you're talking about Whole Foods, they'll be willing to work with innovative brand partners, but they want to see your brand turn a lot. How are you getting the product to turn?
Absolutely. Well, I think one of them you already mentioned is being in the cold box, right?
Yeah,
I mean, as soon
for
as it's
sure.
in the cold box, your velocity goes up like crazy. And, you know, we talked about this on stage a little bit, but, you know, even as a talent-led brand, with all the brand awareness we get from Emma, we still need to do all the nuts and bolts. We still need to have promos to drive trial. We still need to have, you know, off-shelf displays, work with Instacart, work with Amazon for Whole Foods to really drive velocity. So we don't really escape any of that just because of who we are.
A lot of people love Emma Chamberlain. You know, they're just passionate about you and what you do. But getting them passionate about coffee, getting them passionate about a can of coffee, I feel like it's a different thing, is it?
It is. I mean, I think, you know, it's completely different because people's taste buds are far more, I mean, it's more polarizing. Like, you either really like something or you don't, whereas someone's personality, it's a completely different experience. And so I think, you know, that's why we're so excited about diversifying what we offer in all categories, right? Like, we don't just do coffee, we also do matcha. You know, we have a sweet canned offering, we have a lower sugar canned offering. We're trying to diversify what we have so that we can appeal to a broader audience in the way that I think a personality can appeal to a broader audience in a way.
But I hear in the beverage industry all the time, you don't want to be all things to all people.
Totally.
So how do you be the one thing, but the one thing that people love you for?
I mean, I think, you know, even though we are diversifying what we have and we sort of so that people feel like they can find themselves in the brand, we also still have a very, I would say, solid and specific brand identity in the sense that, you know, we aren't necessarily doing everything. Like, we have, you know, we're vegan, we're plant-based. So the product is appealing to that audience, right? And that's not appealing to everybody, but it's appealing to a lot of people. So it's enough people, right? We're leaning very, I don't want to say Gen Z, but modern coffee drinking in a way, leaning towards iced beverages for the most part, various ways to make cold brew. We have lots of products that allow for cold brew making at home. And, you know, we're not everything to everyone, but I think we're trying to cater to the modern way of consuming not even just coffee, but caffeinated beverages, I think, that you would get from a cafe.
Chris, what does the modern caffeine beverage drinker want to see beyond the caffeine in their beverages?
Well, it's tough. You talked about RTDs earlier, and it's really hard to hit flavor profiles there because with our coffee, right, take the coffee home, you grind it, you make it however you want. You add milk, you add plant-based milk, you add sugar, no sugar, whatever you want, and then it's your cup of coffee. Here, we've got to make a drink pre-made, ready to go that you love. And so, I think it's been it's been a lot of work and a lot of back and forth, a lot of focus grouping to figure out how to get a product that the modern consumer wants. I think what we've identified here in this latest iteration we have, it's oat milk. It's a little bit sweeter. It's not quite where you see some major brands at 40 or 50 grams of sugar, but it's a little bit sweeter. I think we're hitting a real, for lack of a better term, sweet spot in taste profile for that modern consumer.
You know what's interesting, Emma? I think about Starbucks.
Yeah.
And I'm not to bring up Starbucks, but they're the elephant in the room.
Oh, of course.
And I almost wonder if Starbucks had approached you and said, hey, Emma, we want you to be the face of a new line of beverages. That might have been an easier sell than saying, hey, Starbucks consumer, come buy a can of Chamberlain coffee.
Yeah.
But when you are thinking about a Starbucks, because again, whether you like it or not, you're competing with them. How do you talk to their consumers and say, try us?
Well, I think, number one, I think for me, I've never been a huge Starbucks fan, right? Like, it's like they didn't necessarily cater to me. I think there's been, that's a different consumer in some ways. No, not necessarily, because it is very broad. But I think what we offer is something that has maybe a bit more of a personality in the sense that, it also feels, I think Chamberlain Coffee feels more boutique-y in a way. It feels more, and that's just because I think naturally we're a smaller brand, but also because our packaging and the personality of the brand is very distinct, and it's very playful, and it's very fun. I feel like there's something about that it adds another dimension to the experience that you maybe don't get from a Starbucks, just because Starbucks is so, it's so massive that it almost, you don't get that sort of warm and fuzzy feeling maybe with it anymore. Yeah. And I bet there are some people who do, but I think that our branding and just the way that we present ourselves as a brand is much more of like, we're this, we want to be your happy coffee family in a way, and we want you to find a character that you resonate with, and we want you to feel a part of this brand. Whereas I feel like with Starbucks, it's just such a big thing now that it's like it's very hard to connect with it, I think.
Can I be a consumer for a second?
Sure.
I feel like your brand says love, and it literally says love on the back.
It does.
In Starbucks, no offense to Starbucks, I don't feel the love,
totally.
so to speak.
It's impossible almost to feel the love from them. They're so huge.
They're so huge.
Yeah.
And corporate.
Yes.
No matter what they do, I think, you go into their cafes, and as welcoming as some of them might be, you don't get that warm and fuzzy feeling that you were talking about.
Totally.
Yeah. Sometimes you get that warm and fuzzy feeling from merch, and I see your sweater there, which feels both preppy and also both, preppy and loose and fun and casual at the same time.
Totally.
How much does merch play into what you guys do right now?
I feel like merch is not a huge part of our brand. We have fun with it. I think we just recently did a limited drop for April Fool's, which was like a shirt that had a coffee spill on it, like printed onto it. And so like that's fun for these sort of marketing moments and, getting people talking about the brand. And I think, obviously naturally people like to sport brands that they love and things that they love, right? So I think we like to have an offering there. But it's not like I don't think it's a main pillar of our business by any means, but it's important to have.
Yeah.
I think we sell a lot of accessories, right? Coffee mugs and tumblers. People want to buy that. I think with merch, it's more, like you said, limited drops, interesting things that come along. We also try not to be huge branding all over it, right? Yeah. So you can, you don't feel like you're a billboard for our company.
Yeah. Chris, the last time we sat down and spoke, we talked about collaborations. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what it takes, for someone who's listening right now and said, I think it would be, if we do this with Chamberlain, it would be awesome. So when someone approaches you with the idea, and then Emma, you hear it, how does that work? So you're like, yeah, that does make sense. Yes, we want to do this.
I think there's a lot of filters it needs to go through, but the first filter is, does it make sense? Because we've done some that haven't made sense, right? And
totally.
And
you've done some that have not made sense.
We've done some that have not made sense, and
Okay.
they're great brands and they're great products, but the idea of coffee with those doesn't work. And the one we just did with Kendall Jenner in 818, like it just naturally worked together. We've had a bunch of those. So the first filter is, does this make sense? If you're a consumer sitting there, are they going to say, oh, coffee and tequila? Yes, espresso martinis, right? And then you can talk about the other filters we go through.
Yeah, I mean, I think, something that's very important to me as well is, the brand identity. Does our brand feel like maybe a sibling or a friend to the other brand? I think that's very important to me because, one of my main focuses with Chamberlain Coffee and where I, come in handy, I would say the most, is the identity of the brand. And so I think it's very important for us to collaborate with brands that have a similar feeling identity. It's obviously nice when it's different to an extent, but they need to feel like siblings. They need to feel like family in a way for it to just work seamlessly when it comes to even how we present the product and the campaign that we shoot or whatever. It's very important.
I am running on borrowed time here, I know, because everyone wants to talk to you guys. But I got to ask, this is your third year in the beverage industry? Called second?
I
think it's 4 for you.
4?
It might even be 5.
Oh.
Wait. 4. Let's say 4.
4, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got to be jaded at this point. You've got to be you've got to be like, yeah, okay, beverage, my God, what am I doing here? But to the point where you're exhausted like everyone else in the beverage industry is exhausted.
You know what? I learn something new about this world every single day that's more riveting than I could have anticipated.
The beverage world in particular?
Yes.
Okay. What'd you learn today?
Fascinating. Oh, well, it's too early. It's a challenging industry. It's really, really challenging, and especially canned.
Yeah.
Especially canned because, there's a process that these products go through to make them shelf stable, to make them, this and that and this and that, and to make them taste good. And it's really tough. It's really, really tough. And I had no idea, but I love it more and more every day because I love the challenge in a way.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I think the solidarity that listeners need to hear from you about that will make them keep going another day, another day, another day. And that's really what it takes. Is as much as it takes money, luck, and some good relationships, it takes perseverance.
Yes.
You've got to keep going. You've got to keep putting one foot in front of the other and saying, okay, let's make this work.
That could not be more true.
Well, that's a great note to end on, I think.
Gorgeous.
Emma, Chris, thank you so much for taking the
Thank you,
time.
Ray.
It's really an honor, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.